Hey guys, I've got a Sponza demo here that's commonly used. This one here on Sketchfab, it doesn't have the curtains, but yeah, so that's your typical showcase. It's a high polygon. It's about 3.7 million polygons. The demo is quite high. It's actually very high for CopperCube. I want to see what that looks like in CopperCube. So there's Sketchfab. There's a Blender, the same file, no lighting, just ordinary, and that file in CopperCube is like that. So I suppose the shading is a little bit more harsher, but it still looks pretty okay, doesn't it? Not too bad. I've added 3 lights, a camera. It's got 800 megabytes, 3.7 million polygons. That's way too much for a CopperCube. It just can't handle something like that. Even if you turn the collision off, so here I've turned collision off and I've just put a basic floor with collision on the ground and a frames per second count. You only get about 10. So it doesn't look too bad, does it? I reckon it looks pretty okay, pretty good. But it is very low frame rate. You can't really play with 10 frames a second. So this is 3.7 million. So I've redone all the textures. If you want to know how I do that, see my other videos. So there's no normal maps, no PBR textures whatsoever. It's just a single texture for each type. And it still contains all the nice detail. Yeah, if not more so than using normal maps. So it still looks pretty good. All the good amount of detail. Yeah, so that's CopperCube's just not designed for high polygon games at all. It's really designed for very low to low. When most people say low, they typically mean, you know, like 500,000 or less. So that's about what CopperCube is. Medium polygons is probably like about 500,000 to a million, I suppose. Like in a big scene, I'm talking about. Because high polygons, yeah, it goes way above that. This is getting on a bit on the high polygon side, I suppose you would say. Yeah, 3.7 million, definitely. Yeah, so CopperCube is really just designed for very low polygons. So if I wanted to use this in CopperCube, you'd have to decimate it. So you'd have to like join it all together. So select all, Control J, and then you would go into your model, click on the scene, the singular model, and you decimate it that way. I mean, I did try, just for example, out of interest, just purely from interest, the whole thing actually, and it will work. So as you can see there, 3.7 million. I got it down to 0.2, so that's 5 times smaller. So if I load this one, got it down to 747,000 polygons. The polygons are still good, but the shading is a bit weird. Unfortunately, I couldn't really fix that completely. See, the roof is smooth. So when you decimate stuff heavily in Blender, all the shading is stuffed up. You need to redo the normal shading calculation. Okay, so in Blender, after you've decimated it, to fix the shading issues a little bit, it'll help. It may not fix it perfectly. Select the mesh, go into edit mode. There you go, it's under the face. Under face, shade smooth, so you would select that. Okay, and when you've done that, just export the file out and load it into CopperCube. I've already done that, so I'll just load it up. Okay, so when you load it back into CopperCube, it's been heavily decimated. It will affect the shading. See, the columns are a little bit weird looking. Most other things are pretty good, however. The roof and everything else is fine. It's just those columns that, for some reason, it didn't shade it very well. It may have been perhaps easier to keep the parts separate and to shade them separately. Perhaps. Anyway, but the face looks basically the same, doesn't it? So you've got, now we're down to 747,000 polygons and 467 megabytes. I mean, for all intents and purposes, that looks almost the same, isn't it, really? Everything else, except for the columns, look a bit weird. You can fix this in CopperCube using the recalculate tangents. However, it will stuff up some other things. It'll remove a lot of the smoothing away. So if you go edit, modify selection and recalculate normals and tangents, it will recalculate the smoothing, shading, but it doesn't do a very good job. Even if you tick improve smoothing, like the columns are good now, they're pretty good actually. Most of it's actually really good, except for, yeah, the roof is all now a bit more blocky than it was. It was smooth before, but now it's lost the smoothness. So yeah, so it doesn't work perfectly. But I mean, you might be able to get away with that. It might be worthwhile. Still looks half alright, doesn't it? Or you could change the texture out to something else, maybe. The face is still okay. It's not perfect, but it's alright. So that nose, it may have something to do with the lower polygon count. But then again, it looks like a shading issue as well. So CopperCube will tend to make things a lot blockier looking. Even though it will fix some shading issues, like those columns are fixed now, but other things are worse. So I mean, it's probably still usable. It doesn't look not terrible, is it? It's not terrible. Still got all the texture details of the textures that I remanufactured using the normal map data on top of the texture. It's not as much detail as the original, of course, but it's still okay, mostly there anyway, isn't it? Yeah, so you can go in all those rooms and stuff. Yeah, I didn't do the doors, those two things. But some of the issues you'll have with CopperCube, there's certain things you can fix. If it's like a squarish object, it'll fix it up alright, it'll be fine. But if it's got a lot of rounded surfaces, like the roof, it'll actually make it a lot worse using CopperCube. And I don't believe you can actually fix that in Blender completely either. I mean, not to my knowledge anyway. My limited knowledge of Blender, that is. So yeah, so if you were to run this one, 747,000, you get about 60. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad, does it? You get about 50 to 60 frames. I've got a few applications open at the moment, so I normally get about 60 actually for this one. 747,000 polygons. Yeah, it's not perfect. From a distance it's okay. Anyway, so I hope that's helpful to someone. Yeah.